Hey guys, what's up? It is week 427. Yeah, so the surgery I believe went well. You know, it's a long healing process with the gum surgery and stuff, so maybe a little slurred speech. I feel a lot better, no pain or anything like that, but we shall see. Unfortunately, though, with that kind of surgery, you can't brush the bottom of your teeth very much, so it's bothering me that I can't go crazy on my teeth. But hey, let's hop into the reviews because you're not here for dental surgery information. We're gonna hop in on the first one here. It's from Deaf Crocodile and is Ilya Muromets. This is also known, it was known in the United States as a Sword and the Dragon. I'm sure it is known that name in other places as well. And this is 1956, made during the time of the USSR. And it is a giant Russian adventure fantasy epic. I had not really heard much about it. I knew that there's like a whole subgenre of these movies that existed, but I missed the time when they were released in the States in the 60s, and they didn't have much of a, I guess they didn't have many releases, or it wasn't really on my radar. Deaf Crocodile's been putting a lot of these out, and it's the director Aleksandr Ptushko. And he directed a few more of these too, but the movie that I know him from is V that Steffen put out, which is a great kind of folk horror movie, which is just excellent and very influential. A lot of really wacky, crazy special effects, 1967. I would say, influential, but also incredibly, it's kind of like in the same kind of, it's very inventive how they did everything. But this movie here, I put this in and I was amazed immediately how beautiful it is. It's this big, widescreen color epic, and I was just like, oh wow, this is like one of the first ones from the USSR or Russia at the time. And it's certain, I can't remember if it was the first color widescreen or something along those lines, but it was gorgeous looking. And they have to use some sort of miniature effects in here and stuff like that, but they definitely had hundreds of extras, including horses and a bunch of people and stuff. It was just this big kind of deal here. And it's based on an old myth of this character who's popped up in other films. Even the church recognized him, so it's this big kind of powerful mythical character. And around this time, you listen to the commentary of Stephen Bissett, which is an excellent commentary. Very knowledgeable guy. He talks about that at the time, this slight propaganda movie to kind of, not even slight, probably to prop up Russia, to show like these folk heroes from Russia. And there's a lot of this kind of stuff in here where they're like for the Russia kind of land. So this crippled guy who can't really do anything, he is gifted a sword of kind of like one of the gods who's kind of perishing. He turns into stone before them and gives the sword and says, deliver this to someone, one of the heroes and whatnot. And this man is enthralled with all this power, and he wants to save Russia from the kind of Mongolians that are invading in the area. And a lot of the Mongolians are portrayed as like kind of monsterish at times. There's one character that kind of blows air like in an immense powerful way, and another kind of like I guess you call him like a kind of guy who collects taxes and stuff is this big giant puppet. It's a guy in like a giant suit kind of deal, but he's grossly overweight and they have to carry him in and everything like that. Just very much a giant monster character. Of course, Ilya Muromets, he kind of refuses to bend down to the Mongolians, and there's some some crooks and some evil people within the kind of Russian kingdom that start to manipulate the situation and get him in trouble until the final kind of end battle confrontation, which is kind of an epic kind of deal here, which includes monsters and dragons and stuff like that, three-headed dragon. It's just a gorgeous movie, and you'd think epic, oh god, this can be 2-3 hours long, especially when you think Russian films, because a lot of the films that I popped in, like what is it, Chekhov, I can't remember the one that Arrow put out. It's a really long film, or something like the Rasputin film that's damn near 3 hours long about the politics of the time in Rasputin, or It's Hard to Be a God. These movies are very long epics, or the Tarkovsky films like Stalker. But this one is 87 minutes. It breezes by. It's beautiful to look at. The action is great. It's scaling. Ilya Muromets is a great character. I really enjoyed this. I actually was taken back how great this was, and watching the fantasy kind of stuff and the characters, or the smaller characters, all the side characters are great too. We have that kind of classic trope in these fantasy sword movies where it's like, oh, they've kidnapped my offspring and have turned him against me, and we're gonna kind of butt heads, not knowing who we are at first, and kind of come together later on throughout the movie. But all these tropes and these things like that, you'll see them used in future kind of fantasy movies from the 80s and 70s and all these kind of things. Like, you know, like, oh, this reminds me a bit of Conan the Barbarian, or anything along those lines. So it's definitely way ahead of its time, highly influential. Another really cool thing about the commentary is Stephen Bissett talks about the releases of these movies and how they made these deals with companies in the United States and Russia, and they'd get these films for that films, and all these kind of releases and things like that. And the American version of the movie and how it was different, had a narration and dubbed over, all sorts of interesting little facts like that as well. Just a great commentary and a great movie. And there's 3 others from Ptushko, and they've been released in a set as well, but we're going to tackle them one a week. Some of them are bigger and longer and more epic, but this one I thought was a fantastic way to start it. There's a lot of crazy imagery, beautiful imagery. Highly would recommend checking out Ilya Muromets, Muromets, if you have not seen the movie or heard of it or anything like that. If you like fantasy or sword scale movies, sandal movies, then this one's definitely for you. Great stuff. Okay, the next one here is from Arrow Video, and this is the Nightwatch collection. Now, these are Danish films. The original was made in 1994. The director went on to remake it in 1997 with a kind of a big Hollywood cast, and this is the first movie from 94 packaged with a sequel, the Legacy sequel that came out in 2023, if I'm not mistaken, that was on Shudder for the Western audience and all that kind of thing like that. So let's talk about the original from 1994 first. Now, I originally saw this one. That's a lot of originals. But I saw this when I did Summer Series for 1994. It was one that I hadn't seen, the Duncan McLeish Summer Series podcast. So I decided to watch this, and I had heard of it. I had seen the cover. I had heard pretty good things about Nightwatch. I had heard that it was always a solid kind of thriller, crime, maybe a little bit horror kind of deal. And, Denmark doesn't have a million trillion horror films. It's a very small country, but their output, this is kind of like one of their biggest ones, to be honest. And the idea that it was such a hit in 94, it was remade in 97 with like Ian McGregor, Patricia Arquette, Josh Brolin, and Nick Nolte is pretty impressive. And I have not seen that film. I definitely would like to track it down and hopefully maybe get a nice release here. But essentially this follows a college student who decides to start working as the night guard or night watchman at kind of a hospital. He has to walk around and check on the bodies and make sure everything's fine. In here, there is, he has to go through the bodies and watch the bodies and things like that. And right away when he's put into here, the old night watchman is this old man and tells him this place makes your breath bad, this place is weird, and he's very creepy, and he's just a little off. It seems like he's almost rotting from this place. And he tells him kind of this old tale about one of the night watchmen years ago was caught having sexual relations with the corpses, had his own harem in there, and everything like that. And there is a serial killer going around at the same time, scalping victims, and the bodies are being delivered here, where he's introduced to this kind of police detective who comes in very nonchalantly at first and almost in kind of a friendly kind of manner and everything like that. At the same time, he's hanging around with his best friend Jens, who is kind of a hellraiser, kind of an awful guy, and as the film progresses, he seems to be more and more of a red herring kind of suspect. And his girlfriend, he also spent a lot of time with her, and they're pretty close and everything like that. So these are kind of, and of course Jen's girlfriend. There's 4 main kind of characters besides, of course, a couple others that pop in and out of. And they start to have this kind of bet where they will challenge each other to do a true kind of a dare thing, and if whoever refuses has to get married, so their freedom will be stripped. But as the murders keep piling on and weird things start happening at the hospital, all signs kind of point to that someone's trying to frame Martin Bork, for the crimes that are happening. Now, I think that the way this story unfolds, the script is probably one of the strong points. It's really well done, too. The acting is really solid. The characters are really well developed. And I think that the way just the entire thing unfolds, how it switches, how things are revealed. And normally I would talk freely about an older film, 94. It's 31 years old now. But I feel like a lot of Western audience probably missed Nightwatch. There was a DVD, I think Anchor Bay put the DVD. It was long out of print. So if you didn't catch it then, there's a chance that you missed it. And I think that's a shame, because I think it's a well-done thriller. Now, first watching this, I thought it was good. When I saw it back then, rewatching, I was like, oh man, this is so perfectly well executed in how it's written and how it unfolds. I was like, this is an excellent, thriller, and I think the acting's great. It has a lot of memorable scenes that kind of they bring up in the kind of legacy sequel. But I would recommend this. There's some dark stuff too. I mean, not every thriller is willing to tackle necrophilia and scalping and all those kind of things like that. But just excellent performances, good suspense, keeps you guessing until the very end. Highly recommended. And I'll talk about the features after we talk about the second film here. Okay? Okay, the next one here by the same director, Nightwatch, Demons Are Forever. So this is, I guess, in the terms that I would say a legacy sequel, as we have had a bunch in the last 5 or 6 years. Bill and Ted had a legacy sequel. Beetlejuice had a legacy sequel. We had the Ghostbusters films have these sequels like that. So it's really wild to me that Nightwatch got one. And I'm not the biggest fan of the legacy sequel, to be honest. I kind of avoid them. I wasn't too big on the Street Trash legacy sequel or anything like that. So Nightwatch having one is just crazy to me. That it proves how big this movie was, just everywhere probably except the United States, and I think it did well here, and they had that remake right away, but it just was not something that I feel like stuck in the pop culture references. So when I saw that they were redoing this or had that sequel, I was like, that's very, very interesting kind of movie. I love movies that take place in morgue. There was one that came out probably 5 or 6 years ago that was from South America that I can't remember off the top of my head. It probably was something very similar to Nightwatch or something along the lines. That was really good and really kind of creepy in general. And then we have the Autopsy of Jane Doe. So I think that this movie has a lot of the same similarities. It brings back a lot of the same characters, and I'm going to have to spoil the original because this sequel is going to bring back the characters and all that kind of stuff here. So in this one, Martin is now grown up. He's 52 years older. He's had a daughter who, and the mother is gone. She's out of the picture. She committed suicide, which is crazy because of the trauma that happened in the first film. So this is a movie that definitely focuses on generational trauma and the people in these situations, and they carry it on and all that kind of stuff like that. And we find out that our serial killer, who is the detective from the first film, is not dead. He is in a mental hospital, still alive. Jens is also moved to Thailand, kind of run away from all that stuff, and Lottie went on to become actually like a priest or whatever. What do you call it? I think it's the same thing. But so she's practicing all that stuff. Recast her. But Martin and Jens are the same actor, and even the doctor who works in the hospital is the same. And he's great in both films. Good solid character, good performance in both, popping up here and there. But what happens is the daughter here decides to take the night watch job. And she's kind of trying to deal with her trauma and get her father out of his, horrible stupor that he's in. And she ends up making a horrible mistake by trying to face his demons head on, face first, by meeting our serial killer. But our serial killer has, some family members of himself. So it's all these different traumas and these different things and history repeating itself to a certain way. There are a couple of brutal murders in here, as one would expect. And they rehash all the things that happened in the first one. We have that music playthrough that was very memorable. We have the moss in the light fixture. So there's so many of these things that happen, almost rehashing the original. There's some nice touches about it. But I just found myself saying this, and I this is as negative as I'm going to be with it because I think it's a good film. I rated it fairly well, but I'm thinking, what is the point of all this? And I understand the point is to kind of have that trauma, to get over the trauma, to rehash the trauma. But at the end of the day, I'm saying, yes, there's a lot of movies that were doing that at this time. And I understand that kind of idea that these kind of things follow you forever and your actions have, consequences and all that kind of thing like that. And that's kind of the point where I'm like, I don't know if we need an hour and 57-minute movie to tell that. But what I liked about the movie more so was seeing the director who made his film that made him famous in 1994, redoing it in kind of a way and updating it and being able to do the directions and have the young actors and stuff like that and handle it really well and update it to the point where you could tell that this person felt like a young director, a good director, all that kind of stuff like that. So I was like, oh, wow, they still can redo this story and update it in a very, very capable way. So that's impressive. And also the one thing that I really did like about it was seeing Martin, Bork, and Jens, the actor who played Jens. I can't think of their actors' names. I probably mispronounced it anyways, as you all know. But them getting to see each other again and interact, and you can tell it's just like one of these moments in time that the filmmakers and the actors and stuff just had this genuine magic when they made the first one, and they're recapturing some of that magic here of the characters. And I think that shows through, and I think it works pretty well in that aspect where you're like, oh, I kind of am feeling this a bit, and it doesn't seem like exactly a cynical cash-in like a lot of the other kind of legacy sequels do feel like to me, or seem like that. And I think that it's there. And I like about the first one, too, I'm going to talk about the first one a little bit more, is that the characters are complex. They're not all great people. They do really shitty things. And it was a different time where your characters could be a little bit more gray, a little bit more, bad, and still be, viable leading men or supporting characters that people would root for to a certain extent. As far as the special features, we have audio commentary by writer-director Ole Bornedal, which is an English, but it's his second language, so it's a little bit harder to understand. It's not like the best leveled commentary, to be honest. Not Afraid of the Darkness, a newly filmed interview with the director of photography Dan Lounston, and it's pretty interesting, pretty decent. Death in Denmark, Appreciation, Nightwatch, and Nightwatch Demons Are Forever by film critic, Nordic noir specialist Barry Forshaw. Solid information. Although I do think on all these little featurettes, no problem with anything. That's how you would write one. The video essay, you have to rehash the plot and break into plot like it's its own entity. But after watching the movies, you're like, yes, we were talking a lot about the plot in all these, but that's perfectly fine because they're trying to do it to make a point. So decent enough. And then we have double-sided fold-out poster and stuff like that by both films, Peter Strand, illustrated collector's booklet featuring new writings on the film by Eva Norum Redval. And what else do we have here before we move on? Nightwatch making of the original documentary with interviews with the cinematographer, producer, director. Disc 2, Nightwatch Demons Are Forever. How the Nightmare Nightwatch films explore the horrors of adulthood. A brand new video essay by film critic Heather Wixon. And Life and Death on Mars, Public and Private Life in the Nightwatch Universe. A brand new video essay by film critic Aleksandr Heller Nicholas. And those are decent. They definitely cover a lot of the stuff that is kind of forefront in the original Nightwatch and everything like that. So a great release of a movie. They are locked Region A, according to the back. I didn't get a chance to test them out in my other player, but they are in Danish with English subtitles, and I do believe both of them do have 5.1 mixes on here that sound pretty good. Creepy. The first one I would highly recommend. The second one I would say give it a watch if you're a huge fan of the original and you kind of want to see a director that still got it. I don't love the second one, but I appreciate it more than I ever thought I would, to be honest. So the Nightwatch collection. Check it out. Okay, this one here is from Eureka Films, and this is The Tattooed Dragon, starring Jimmy Wang Yu, directed by Lo Wei, who directed a bunch of stuff, including movies by Bruce Lee, Jackie Chan, and, of course, Jimmy Wang Yu. So, this is made in 1973. Jimmy Wang Yu made a couple movies. He made A Man Called Tiger, which I also covered on this channel. But, yeah, so this one is filmed in Thailand. Which, right away I was like, oh, this is definitely not Hong Kong. And Jimmy Wang Yu is this mythical character named the Dragon. The Tattooed Dragon. So they just kind of throw it right in there. The score, right away, I was like, man, that sounds a lot like Once Upon a Time in the West, and I believe some of that is. A lot of the music lifted from other movies. And Jimmy Wang Yu is attacked by this gang because they stole a bunch of money. He gets hurt, and he runs away. And he ends up jumping into this kind of low rent martial arts place. They decide to help him. The bad guys show up, kill everybody, and then he runs away again and stumbles on our kind of second hero of the movie, who's kind of just a wannabe kind of farmer who's raising ducks, and he's looking to make a living, living for himself, and marry this woman that he's in love with, and with the blessing of her father, all that kind of stuff like that. But Jimmy Wang Yu starts to heal a little bit and befriends them and hangs around. And a gambling den kind of opens up here. And this gambling den is run by, you guys guessed it, one of the main kind of henchmen has been chasing him down this whole time. And his boss is the one running it. His boss is in a bunch of movies where he plays a villain. He's in a couple of Cynthia Rothrock movies. He's in a lot of the Bruce Lee stuff early on. So this guy's in a bunch of stuff. And probably one of the better martial arts in the movies, according to the commentaries. And I would agree with that. I think that he poses the biggest threat. So Jimmy Wang Yu couldn't make movies for Shaw anymore. He stopped. He had this big lawsuit, so he couldn't make movies in Hong Kong. That's why you'll see his movies pop up in all sorts of crazy places, even Australia, when he pops up in stuff like what is the Man from Hong Kong, of course. So he pops up in all these different movies by Brian Trencher Smith. So this one again is made in Thailand. And this gambling den opens up, and basically people are betting their whole lives in there, and this movie becomes this big morality tale about how bad gambling is and how shitty gambling is. One of the most hilarious things about this movie is there's this side character who's always trying to get money. He's really kind of a greedy kind of asshole character, and he's like whatnot. And he wastes his entire life savings. He bets his whole house on this, and his family's introduced about 5 seconds before we realize he's going to put the lease up for the house for collateral. That's how these bad guys are doing it. And we're introduced to his family, his wife, and then the next scene is them killing themselves. And you're like, okay, this would have had a lot more impact if I would have been like introduced to them earlier, but you're introduced to them, then 5 minutes later they jump into the river and drown themselves. And this is kind of the catalyst for our farmer hero, who is a TV kind of star, as the commentaries point out. I wasn't familiar with him at the time. And our kind of Jimmy Wang Yu to stand up to the bad guys, and they decide they're going to get him back in kind of a gambling style way, which is common in a lot of Asian films. You'll notice that in a lot of the kind of, like, I would say more like the Taiwan or Hong Kong movies. There's a lot of gambling and gambling stuff like that, and the kind of I guess morality to a certain extent, but it's always in these movies. If you see a lot of the Shaw Brother movies, especially like the Hex, I think one of the Hex films, the Hex series, there's like somebody cheating with the things like that, or fake ghost snatchers. There's a lot of stuff where people are constantly cheating and gambling and things like that. So Jimmy Wang Yu ends up going to this gambling den, and they do win, but there's going to be some consequences, and a big fight ensues, and people die that you wouldn't expect to die, and all that kind of stuff like that. And yeah, this one's overall decent. It's kind of corny and funny in a lot of aspects because the whole morality gambling thing comes across as very dated, and this actually place becomes a little bit, seems very puritanical. Jimmy Wang Yu does all right in the fight scenes. The main bad guy and him have a pretty good fight scene, actually. The main bad guy does a good job. Overall, this is decent. This is kind of hammy and cheesy in comparison to a lot of the other, especially the Shaw Brothers movies at the times, to be honest. It's not up to snuff. To be honest, there is 2 commentaries on here, both of which are filled with experts. One is Frank Jin and Michael Worth on there. They talk about, the release date and stuff like that, and they do like a little details about Michael Worth knows a lot about the fighting and stuff, so they break that down and say, well, maybe they actually did know some Muay Thai in here in Thailand. There's a lot of Muay Thai fighting scenes. And then we have Army Venema and Michael Leader in here, again, guys that lived in Hong Kong and knew these countries and stuff like that, and knew these people, so they talk a lot about the film as well. Decent commentaries for sure. And then we have a little video. Let me see who did this one. It's a new interview with martial arts cinema expert Wayne Wong on the career of Lo Wei, director of Tattoo Dragon. This is nice because he points out that Lo Wei, I've covered a bunch of Lo Wei movies on here. He's not in it, but he was also an actor. Talks about how Lo Wei started off, by giving Jimmy Wang Yu his start, by giving Bruce Lee a start, by giving Jackie Chan his start. All these guys started off in their films and then kind of broke away and found themselves, but they got their initial start from Lo Wei, who ended up being kind of a controversial figure when it talks about that. So very interesting stuff here. Overall, this one looks and sounds good. You can watch in English and is it Mandarin? I think it is Mandarin this time around. Yeah, Mandarin. But the movie I don't love, but I do like the features, and I think it's decent enough. It feels a little odd, like it's definitely, and a lot of them are not made in Hong Kong. A lot of the Hong Kong made movies are filmed in Taiwan or Thailand or somewhere else along the line. But overall, I think this one's worth watching if you really love these kind of movies. And I do think the second lead, the actor I'm not too familiar with, he does a good job as well. And he has some comedy bits with his ducks, of course, and wanting to, his whole big spiel on stuff like that. But yeah, decent. The Tattoo Dragon, probably in line with something like A Man Called Tiger on kind of element. Okay, next up here is from Full Moon Entertainment, 1987, and we got Creepozoids, filmed by David DeCoteau. I hope I'm saying his name right. Now, David DeCoteau's first directed feature was Dream Maniac, which also was an Empire, I believe. I believe these are both Empire films here. And he does a bunch of commentaries with David Duvall, and he has directed numerous films. He's a film historian. He's worked on a bunch of movies in smaller capacities before he got to direct. So the guy is a walking encyclopedia of film, and he does a commentary on Creepozoids. Now, Creepozoids was a movie that I probably got on VHS and DVD, and I always tried to watch it. I lost interest for some reason. This time around, I finally finished Creepozoids, and I enjoy it. It was better than I thought. It's very much out of the school of a Roger Corman or a Empire movie, where it's definitely that heavily influenced kind of alien post-apocalyptic world movie, where there's acid rain everywhere, and a group of 4 people end up stumbling into some sort of a lab that's underground to avoid the acid rain. And what happened was there was some kind of crazy experiment that created the Creepozoid. Creepozoids. And what the Creepozoids are, I don't know. One is apparently this giant gross bug that's kind of freaky. One is a giant mutated rat. And what happens is these Creepozoids will bite or attack you, and if they scratch or bite you, you kind of turn into like this melted zombie-style creature and try to attack them as well. There's really cool special effects made on a budget, and David DeCoteau makes jokes about this movie being filmed in like a 1,200 square foot place, all of it turning doors around, so it's incredibly low budget. Linnea Quigley is in here, and there's plenty of nudity, okay? Soapy nudity for Linnea Quigley in a movie, and some other nudity as well. So it has its, trash-tastic qualities that I think a lot of people would like. David DeCoteau talks about the commentary, how Charlie Band watched it, and he's very excited because he owns all these films outright, and it's not one of the big expensive pictures he produced at the time at the castle, De Laurentiis Castle and stuff. It was something that was made on a budget. It is well shot and well made for the low budget stuff, and I actually, this time taking it away, I was impressed with a lot of the special effects. Although the giant rat is silly and funny, I think this works really well. It's also really short. It doesn't wear out its welcome. The very ending is batshit insanity, where we actually have the attack of a Creepozoid baby, and is a baby on the cover. But every time I used to pick this movie up at the video store when I was a kid and see the little baby on the back, and I'm like, what the fuck is Creepozoids? But it reminds me a lot of something like Galaxy of Terror from 1980, or Forbidden, would that be Forbidden World or Forbidden World, possibly? You guys, the Corman one, not the other one. I always get mixed up with, it's Forbidden Worlds, not Forbidden Planet. Forbidden Planet is the Leslie Nielsen sci-fi classic from the 50s, Dan Francis. So I always get Forbidden World and Forbidden Planet mixed up, but more in line with the Corman stuff. But, it's so many of the Charlie Band movies would kind of follow this suit too, this sci-fi kind of trapped in kind of element like that. But enjoyable, gory, silly, short. No subtitles, but it looked and sounded pretty good. You can watch it in 5.1. And the commentary's great. So that is Creepozoids. If it sounds like it's up your alley, then check it out. Great title too. Very, very, very funny. Okay, this next one here is from 1999. It is also a full moon feature, and I remember seeing this one when it came out at the tender age of 13, and this is Blood Dolls. Charles Band actually directed this one himself, and Charlie Band loves little doll films, little creature films, hence Puppet Master and stuff like that. So this is like a smorgasbord of a lot of the stuff that Charles Band's company had already done before when it's full moon. So we have like the bad channels where we have the rock and roll music band in there mixed in and stuff like that. That rock and roll stuff, the Ted Nicolai movie. Nicolau, sorry. And then we also have like the tiny headed character and the weird kind of stuff he does, and like Head of the Family. And then we have the evil little dolls in the vein of Puppet Master and many, many more movies that he would produce or direct himself. So this one is a little wild. What we have here is this kind of big kind of investor. I can't remember exactly what he does, but these other three business guys completely screw him over and kind of take him to the cleaners, where he's going to lose a lot of money and possibly go bankrupt. And so what he decides to do is he has these kind of dolls that he's created from people that have crossed him before that were involved with this, and he's turned them into these little bit of monsters, kind of like Puppet Masters. We have like a pimp and one that's all tattooed out, and then we have an Asian influenced one that is kind of wild and stuff. You can see the blood dolls right on there. They got the Japanese little flag on there and the pimp and everything. Marketing, yep, definitely going to merchandise the shit out of the blood dolls. And I think they did create figures too to go along with this. And one of the guys that double crossed him is legendary character actor Nicholas Worth from Darkman, Don't Answer the Phone, Hell Comes to Frogtown. One of my personal favorite character actors. If you need a big bellowing voice or kind of a henchman, he's probably the perfect guy to get. If Sam Raimi would have got to direct Spider-Man or something, a superhero movie in 1990 when he did Darkman, I can't think of a better person as Nicholas Worth to play than to play the Kingpin, Wilson Fisk. I think he would have been tremendous at that role. Looks just like him, but he's pretty good in this. He doesn't have the biggest role, but he's absolutely a delight to watch in here. I don't give a my hairy ass, whatever. He's just making these crazy comments, spotty dick, or whatever, yelling at his security guard. But what's interesting in this movie is there's some wacky, weird love story and a lot of weird, crazy side characters. Phil Fondacaro, who's a Full Moon Empire regular, is kind of like one of our main boss's henchmen and stuff. And he constantly is yelling at these girls that are locked up to play music. So we incorporate this heavy metal kind of music and slave girl thing in there as well. We have I guess right hand man and a guy as a clown who's kind of like a hitman, who's got this weird kind of Lance Hendrickson, Tommy Lee Jones kind of energy that goes around, carrying out his bidding. Overall, Blood Dolls is kind of sloppy and messy because it's just a mixture of things, and I would say the sloppy and messy stuff comes to at the end. That's really just kind of like the decision to not pick an ending, which is kind of quirky in a way, but after you get used to kind of what's going on in Blood Dolls, I kind of fell under its spell, and I overall enjoyed it. And it was kind of fun to reminisce about it. I remember a lot of the S&M stuff, but in my memory, it was Nicholas Worth tied up in the S&M stuff and whatnot, but that's not actually the case. Overall, Blood Dolls is worth a look. The one thing I did notice, and I don't know what it is, at times it looked pretty solid on Blu-ray. Then other times it looked like, I don't want to, tell tales out of school or anything, but it looked like it's a little, maybe it's AI updated, or maybe like part of it, one piece of scene or here or there was not the elements were lost. And I know they're putting out Subspecies 4 on Blu-ray, and Subspecies 4 was infamous for having been edited on tape or lost elements or something along those lines. So I don't know if Full Moon's playing into the AI updated stuff. I have no idea. Somebody else would have to confirm this, and I really haven't followed Blood Dolls and its lineage of releases. I saw it on VHS, so I don't know if the DVD was kind of the same vein or whatnot. I don't know the quality of Blood Dolls or the history of the film. And I am curious to think, when was the last film that Full Moon shot on film? We got Blood Dolls and Hideous was definitely shot on film. But are we getting into the point where Shrieker probably wasn't shot on film, or Retro Puppet Master most certainly wasn't? We're getting to that time when it's kind of towards the end of it. But you know what? I do think that the lead kind of the actress in here, Debbie Mayer, she does a really good job, and she's a solid kind of interesting character, and she has a lot of dialogue, and her interactions with the main kind of baddie or main kind of guy in here is also really good, and he's solid too with a kind of shrunken head. I thought that was kind of a fun aspect to it. Overall, Blood Dolls is, it's pretty mediocre, but I enjoyed it a lot more than I should have. But it has these kind of little nice touches that and nostalgia that I kind of overall kind of liked. But yeah, that is Blood Dolls. Check it out if it sounds like it's up your alley. Next up here is Slave Girls from Beyond Infinity, and this is actually 87 movie too, if I'm not mistaken, directed by Ken Dixon. Now, Ken Dixon was known, for me at least, as kind of the guy who produced a lot of those compilation, or directed a lot of those compilation videos that came out in the early 80s from they would be like Charlie Band's probably company, then Wizard or something along the lines. I think it would probably been Wizard at the time, Wizard Video, but they were like Film Gore and Famous TNA and The Best of Sex and Violence and along those lines. And, they had some footage with John Carradine or Sybil Danning talking yes, this movie sucks balls. I'm John Carradine. And then they would show a clip of a movie or something along those lines, being snarky. But so this is, I think, the only actual film he directed. And the has Brinke Stevens in here as the big name. But the other actress in here, Elizabeth Cayton, I'm not sure how she says her name, but she's in a bunch of stuff, and I've seen a bunch of stuff she's in. And this one has the most hilarious description on the back, which actually made me chuckle out loud. A controversial and campy riff on Richard Connell's often adapted story, The Most Dangerous Game, but set in space and with bigger boobs. Hilarious. Right there. So it is a futuristic movie, and these two girls, these women that are prisoners, escape into a spaceship. They crash land on this planet. They realize that it's run by this kind of rich guy who loves to hunt people. Brinke Stevens and another guy are there that are playing dumb to survive, and we realize this guy is like a trophy room and everything, and two robots helping him. And there's some crazy stuff on this planet itself, like zombies, and this other guy, the big guy in the cover here, who's possibly been hunted before, and maybe he's dead and frozen in time. Weird stuff here. But he's going to hunt them in the classic trope, it's been done a million times. Naked prey, surviving the game, hard target, all kind of riffs on, The Most Dangerous Game here. But this time, it's with bigger boobs. Didn't you hear me say the back of the case here? But, yeah, it's exactly what you expect. And at times, our hunter gets a little gropey, a little rapey. There's also some nudity scenes here, some sex scenes and things like that. Some back and forth comedy scenes between our two leads and bonding moments. Overall, the set designs and stuff like that aren't horrible. The acting is iffy and patchy, but you kind of expect it in this kind of movie, in that kind of vein and kind of silliness and whatnot. The movie overall is alright. I appreciate what it's going for, but some of the acting is a little clunky, like I said, and it's just a little tedious at times, but it's also kind of fast-paced, or expected to be. It's not offensive in a term that would bother you anything. I overall enjoyed Slave Girls from Beyond Infinity, and they set it up for a whole kind of series of these two to keep going on. Now, the features were a little slim. There's a tribute to Elizabeth Catan, and that is just riddled with nudity scenes of hers, and it's a bunch of it, from full frontal, all that kind of stuff like that. It's basically just like a softcore kind of loop thing of 5 minutes of her breast and all that kind of stuff like that. I did enjoy, like the two girls in here. I thought they had fun chemistry, and there's plenty of them if you want to look at girls in kind of like caveman outfits, which is definitely a fetish in a lot of these kind of 90s or late 80s movies like that. Then Slave Girls from Beyond Infinity is definitely for you. Not incredibly violent or anything like that, or a gore fest or anything, but there are some decent effects, and Carl Buechler did the big kind of monster at the end, and he looks pretty cool. Overall, this one's decent. It's not great, but it's not horrible either, and you could definitely waste, like 70, 80 minutes on something way worse than Slave Girls Beyond Infinity. Oh, it does have a 5.1 mix, but I felt like the 2.1 played better on my sound system. Usually the 5.1 plays great, but I thought the dialogue was a little quiet this time, but with the 2.1 it kind of came right, the 2.0 came in really great. So that is Slave Girls Beyond Infinity. Check it out. Or From Beyond Infinity. Oh my god. Okay, we have a couple 2025 movies I checked out. First up is Opus, and this movie is a lot like Blink Twice and Paternoster and the Mission of the Light from last year. Both those movies, you take them together, you get Opus. And I don't mean that as an insult to Opus, because I really liked Paternoster, and I really liked Blink Twice, so I really liked Opus. So this one essentially follows the story of John Malkovich, is this famous singer. He's considered like the biggest pop star of all time, and he hasn't released an album in like 30 years. And our lead here works for kind of like as a journalist, but she's always getting dogged on, not being able to do her job properly, never getting the push that she needs. Her boss kind of just like half-asses things, takes credit for her work, all that kind of stuff like that. And I think it's 5 or 6 people get this invite because our special, pop culture icon in John Malkovich is creating a new album, and he is the king of entertainment. Think of it as basically like Michael Jackson was still alive, and he was, didn't have like the horrible, reputation and stuff like that came later in his life. And he just hadn't made an album in 20 years, and all of a sudden, boom, this guy comes out of nowhere. He sends these people out to be invited to go on this thing. And our lead is really doing a lot of research, reading a lot of the pamphlets that were sent along, and she realizes there's some cultish stuff kind of going on here. They've been completely isolated in the middle of nowhere. And before long, you kind of realize that something's going to happen. These people are almost in a cult. They worship John Malkovich, and people start to die. I don't want to spoil anything, but Malkovich is fantastic in the movie, especially there's this scene where he's performing for everyone, and it's just a great performance. It's really creepy and unsettling, but also just completely with no strings. He's not afraid to do anything, and he's always been great in here. Juliette Lewis is also one of the people who's invited, and these are all like kind of old reporters or music influencers or something along those lines, but you get pretty much what's going on with after like the first 30-40 minutes. You know exactly what's going to happen here. Overall, I really liked it. I really enjoyed it. I thought the acting was great, and I thought the message at the very end was very true, and it felt real. And I think that that's in a lot of ways how people look, like manipulators and stuff will do that kind of deal at the end. Some things are worth it, and some people do not care, especially nowadays of what somebody did. It doesn't matter what they did. It just matters what their end goal was and things of that nature. But Opus is really good stuff. Recommended. It's an A24, but, I would recommend checking this out. So if you haven't seen it, it's good. I enjoyed it. Okay, this next one here is Getaway, and this was technically released last year, but more wide this year, so I'm going to count it this year. And this is by the same director who did Crazy House, which came out last year, and I probably was the biggest fan of Crazy House. It's a Finnish director, and Crazy House was who was it, Nick Frost, and was it Heather Graham in that one? I believe it was somebody. I think so. It was a classic actress. I can't think of her name. Geez, I feel so stupid. Like it's on the tip of my tongue. But essentially, it was kind of like a 90s sitcom that gradually went into hell and became this violent, insane, kind of horror parody, weird satire thing, which I absolutely loved. But Getaway is also like a movie from last year that was widely released last year. And if I say it, it'll completely spoil everything, so I don't want to until I get to the spoiler parts. But Nick Frost and his family are deciding to go to this isolated location for a vacation, and what this place is having is this really private kind of very oriented in their history and their culture, like basically a festival, and their festival is to kind of, I don't know if it's necessarily to celebrate, but to remember what happened years and years ago. They were isolated and they were lied to by the British and everything like that. They were told that there was a virus that wasn't there, and a plague, and they were isolated and taken advantage of, and while the rich guy kind of prospered and everyone else starved and to death, and eventually resorted to cannibalism. That's kind of what this place was built on, and for years they kind of carried on this tradition, possibly with cannibalism. And Nick Frost and his family want to go there. There's 4 of them, and they're really excited about it, and they're kind of your simple, oh, we're kind of the dumb, thick kind of family, not knowing what's going on, and they go here, and of course weird things start to happen. The guy they rented the house from is a peeping Tom, and he's obsessed with the daughter, and he's just a pervert in general, and it leads to some funny things. And the kind of matriarch of this island, the person who's running all these kind of, ceremonies and things like that, absolutely hates Nick Frost and his family and everything like that. But there's a lot of comedy in play, and then of course there is the third act where things kind of change and everything gets really violent and really bloody and really intense, and became absolutely hilarious and a little over the top, purposely so, and set up well. I really liked Getaway. A lot of people are hating this. It feels definitely like a horror film that would have came out in like 2010 to 2015, a lower budget but still well done horror gore movie kind of deal. So if you like Crazy House, I think you'll like Getaway. I enjoyed it a lot more than I expected to, and love Nick Frost, huge Nick Frost fan. He partially wrote this movie. He's credited as it, so I really like that. But if we want to get into spoilers here, so just a quick spoiler, it's almost identical to Lowlifes, which came out in 2024 widely, and maybe even came out in 2023 for a short period. But Lowlifes is a really great and underrated movie from last year, which has the you think one thing, but it's absolutely different. And I think that these probably couldn't rip each other off, so it might have been written the idea around the same time. But I would recommend Getaway. For isolated horror, gory, violent, funny, and leads open for a sequel. But check it out. Okay, the Patreon pick is 1968's Corruption. Maybe I should block that. This is from Grindhouse Releasing. It stars Peter Cushing in a rare sleazy role, but Peter Cushing is one of my all-time favorite actors, and this is a great, crazy, weird movie that maybe a lot of people haven't seen. So this is based on a book, which I learned from the commentary with Jonathan Rigby, and I can't think of the other person's name. I'll make sure I say it at the end, but they said it was a book that was kind of a lousy book, which I great learning about that. But this is a classic story of kind of like Eyes Without a Face or Dr. Phibes, or that story, right, where it's like someone is hurt or someone is dead, and I'm willing to do anything to make them better, right? So Peter Cushing is an older surgeon, beauty, plastic surgeon kind of deal, and he has this young kind of trophy wife, but he absolutely loves her, and she seems to love him too. And in the very beginning, he's drugged to this kind of 60s hippie party, and she's a model, and this asshole photographer kind of pushes her and presses her into taking pictures, and she loves the attention. She doesn't want to go like Peter Cushing does, and something tragic happens. A light falls on her face, and it scars her beauty forever. Her sister is also a major character in here, and she's like kind of in a relationship with another fellow surgeon that's Peter Cushing's friend, so a younger man. So they're all tied into this, and Peter Cushing vows basically to do anything to cure his wife of this ailment that he feels pretty much responsible for, and that sets him up kind of be in your character like the Dr. Knox character in Flesh and the Fiends, or your Dr. Frankenstein character in the Hammer, Frankenstein films, except he has more of a conscience in this than any of those films, but he's definitely that character willing to do, grotesque things or illegal things or even murder to, preserve his wife's beauty. So what happens is it starts off him taking the brain, something out of the brain, the pineal gland, to basically cure his wife's, scarred up face, which reminds me of stuff like, hey, From Beyond or Rejuvenator. The Rejuvenator has a very similar plot, right, of the old woman the old Hollywood legend woman who basically gets that serum and it makes her young and beautiful, but there's side effects. And this kind of is the same aspect here, where at first Peter Cushing takes it from a corpse, but it's not going to last, and he needs to go higher and higher until before long he's murdering people and to preserve this beauty. And the ending has kind of a home invasion aspect that twists and turns the tables on them, where we kind of have Peter Cushing and his wife going against some hippies, but they have this giant laser within the house, which becomes this kind of wackadoo thing at the very end, which is really weird. I think it does share a little similarities to something like Scream and Scream Again from 1970, which has like Cushing in a small role, but Lee and Price as well, and this kind of mad scientist aspect. But it's definitely more in line with something like Flesh and the Fiends or the Frankenstein movies. But Cushing has this great, elegance about him, and this nervousness that he always has in this one, where he seems he doesn't always have the nervousness when he's a cocky asshole in like the Frankenstein movies. He's great in that, but he has that like more genteel touch in this one, as Troy Howarth would say, genteel about Peter Cushing, and he definitely does in this one. And it works really well. I think his acting performance really drives this movie forward. There is 2 versions of this movie on this disc. One is incredibly sleazy. It's more of an international version where he kills a prostitute and, her breasts are hanging out and you have more sweaty and more violence. And the other one, it's a better actress and it's a better put together scene, but it's not as sleazy. So take your pick. You watch both if you must do so. But overall, I really enjoyed this. I really liked this movie. And I remember seeing it before from the Grindhouse release, and it was always advertised as the sleazy Peter Cushing performance he didn't like, and I can see why he didn't like it because he's so good in everything, and it's just it's a curio for people that don't like it, and I think people that like it will get some real enjoyment out of the movie. As far as the special features, there's no subtitles, but it's an old Blu-ray, but it looks great, spectacular, and 2K remastered here, original uncensored version and an alternate scenes. You can watch the other one. You got both versions on there, like I said. And we have historic documents from the original production, including the director's personal shooting script, interviews with stars Billy Murray, not the same guy, Jan Waters, Wendy Varnells, and Peter Cushing. Great stuff. Audio commentary by English Gothic author Jonathan Rigby and Peter Cushing biographer David Miller. That is very interesting as well. Like I said, they talk about the book. They talk about how people reacted to this thing, how Cushing didn't really love it. Liner notes by acclaimed UK horror journalist Alan Bryce. Extensive galleries of stills, poster art, trailers, TV spots, and radio spots, and other surprises. Yeah, great movie. If you're a fan of Cushing, it's a must-see. If you're a fan of, these classic movies like that, it's not... It's a contemporary movie, too, which is rare for Cushing, but also has some beautiful locations like the beach house and stuff. Really check this one out. I think you guys would enjoy it. All right, let's get these questions, comments, and concerns. This comment smells of death. I know that you're going to be doing a top 10 video for the Horror 92 series, but I'm curious to know what some of your favorite discoveries and first-time watches of 82 were. The Beast to Die is one of my favorite Japanese crime films, so it's great that Radiance Blu-ray will bring it at more people's attention. Radiance obviously has a deal going with Kadokawa, the studio that made The Beast to Die, as a lot of their recent Japanese releases are from Kadokawa's catalog. They also own the Dai back catalog, and a few years back they released a line of old Dai horror films on DVD in Japan, so hopefully you can look forward to Radiance following up their Dai Gothic and Tale of Owa's Ghost releases to more classic Japanese horror. It's funny you mention that. They're already planning a Dai 2 set, which is really cool. But yeah, hope you're feeling better. I feel great now. But yeah, so the 1982 big video essay that I'm doing is going to have a top 25. It's also going to have honorable mentions. It's going to have a notable snubs. I will try to add possibly a first-time watches and hidden gems category as well. I'm writing it now, and I'm being in more depth with it. I watch like 270 movies, and I want to make sure every movie gets at least a brief couple-sentence kind of thing, and maybe some connections with other movies. So I'm going bigger. Hopefully it pays off, but if it doesn't pay off in terms of like response, it doesn't matter because this is my record of that time I watched all those movies, and it's going to mean something to me later. But I do it because I enjoy it. Thank you. Ken Coakley, I saw the stuff at a local theater about 10 years ago. In front of the stage was a real table with bread, as well as a bunch of containers of marshmallow fluff with fake labels saying the stuff. I made a sandwich and took a bite and acted like it was causing me to mutate. My friend said it was a good imitation of the character in Street Trash. The film marked the second time Michael Moriarty acted with Danny Aiello. In 1973, they played teammates in the 73 film Bang the Drum Slowly. Moriarty was also in a police thriller called Report to the Commissioner with the Alfred Kodo, Susan Blakely, and Richard Gere. In 77 or 78, Moriarty starred with James Wood and Meryl Streep in the miniseries called Holocaust. It was 6 hours in length, but felt like a few minutes. I didn't notice until recently that the actor who played the older brother was also in Once Upon a Time in America. The stuff featured my favorite tandem of Leonard Cohen and Michael Moriarty. Yeah, that Holocaust movie, that miniseries, is what really put Larry Cohen's eyes on Michael Moriarty. I think you meant Larry Cohen, not Leonard Cohen. Leonard Cohen would be a little bit more sad, I think. But Cobra is a movie that I saw a long time ago when I started in theaters in '86. I heard the guns with the snakes on the handles was something Stallone came up with for the cat when he was cast in Beverly Hills Cop. The movie did make my eyes roll. For instance, when the police chief told Stallone that he had an attitude problem, only to have Stallone say, "But it's a small one." Yeah, it's a terrible line. Like Rocky IV, Stallone needed an excuse to put his girlfriend Bridget Nielsen in the movie. I like Rennie Santoni being in the film. Yeah, he's fun in it. Ilk Vomit, Eastern Concourse is regarded by a lot within the martial arts film community as legit Samuel's best film. Can't wait to hear what you had to say about it. Hudson 38, I gotta give it to you, Dave. All the ups and downs you had health-wise, you still come through with the weekly reviews. For as I know, you have not missed a week. I bet you if you had a mouth wired shut, you'd learn sign language. You, sir, are a real trooper. Now get on your face and give me 25. Yeah. The show must go on. I'm like Vince McMahon when it comes to that. Just kidding. But nothing like Vince. Hopefully. Audio love. Greg Ararki's films are great. Nowhere is definitely a standout. Talk about an all-star cast. Everyone is in this one. For the main cast of the bit players, I heard you mention Splendor. Check it out. It's co-stars Kathleen Robertson, Nowhere, Beverly Hills 90210, and Jonathan Scotch and Matt Kessler. It was a deviation from Araki's usual fare, but it definitely has his stamp on it. The Nick Buell from Belgium. Tourist Trap was delivered yesterday. It looks like a blast. I already checked out the interview with Jocelyn Jones. She had mostly good memories to share with the score of fans she knows this film has garnered. Many thanks for the enthused Nowhere review, sir. 2 Mrparka reviews in many weeks. Will be pigs flying soon, too? I don't know, maybe. I love the final part in the Mr. Araki's Teenage Apocalypse trilogy that Criterion released is the third time I bought it. I am holding onto my 2013 Second Sight DVD, which also features a great commentary with Araki and some of the cast, but not as many of the new release. In this older track, the cast poke fun at themselves for having done more nudity in films now than they're old then, when they were in their 20s and working for Greg. Bizarre, but fun fact, fun fact, Nowhere was supposed to be a launching pad for them TV series to be directed and produced by Greg Araki, but it never got greenlit, though the scripts were written. Question: speaking of trilogies, what's your number one trilogy? If we're talking Dead trilogy, I know there's 6 films that can we include the Dead trilogy hands down, or maybe the Eternally Dead trilogy, but if we can't include those, let's go with the Dollars trilogy from Sergio Leone. 2, have you ever been to an actual tourist trap? Non-lethal, obviously. Yeah, I mean, I was in Florida, Clearwater, Florida is loaded with tourist traps. I was in the Grand Canyon. Everything's loaded with tourist traps in America. Hey, America, gotta make money. What would Greg Araki directed horror film movie look like to you? I think Mysterious Skin's probably the closest. I think that it does have some horror aspects into it. I think it would definitely be more of an alien horror film because he's obsessed with aliens and abduction. Till the next show, God willing, take care. Dork Kitty, what about Greg Araki's The Living End? It is from this period and often overlooked. I mentioned not having seen it, but I'm wanting to see it. Yes, it definitely is overlooked. Zach Nolan, do you have any idea if Mystics and Ballet released on Blu-ray anytime soon? I'm about to break down and buy it on DVD. I do not know. I would like to see a Blu-ray. It's a great movie. Disconnected, thanks for covering Gwen and the Book of Sand. Thanks for working on the release. Way Up Dude gives me a thumbs up. Thank you. Travis Linscomb, I love The 10th Victim. Petrie has become a favorite director of mine over the past couple years. I'm curious to see if you'll like it because it does have some silly Euro spy vibe, which I know isn't your cup of tea. No, but it is, great director and has a Mastroianni and a bunch of stuff that I think I will like. I think I'll be able to forgive it on that one. But no update, no nothing this time. I'm in the poorhouse after my surgery. I'm just kidding. But yeah, let's get out of here. All right, guys, thank you very much for watching. And as always, have a good one.